All right, hello everybody. My name is Amalia Weber. I'm the program specialist here at Rochester Hills Public Library, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening's program, Water Infrastructure 101, What You Need to Know Below and Beyond. Before we get started, I'd like to take care of a few housekeeping details. Firstly, tonight's program will be recorded and available to view about 1 week from tonight on our YouTube page and on the RHPL website shortly after. We ask that audience members please silence or turn off your cell phones before we begin in order to avoid any disturbances during the presentation. Our next program is Leaders, Legends, and Liars, presented by the Rochester Hills Museum at Van Hoosen Farm, which will be an in-person event on Tuesday, November 21st at 7 p.m. You can sign up for that at calendar.rhpl.org. And now, without further ado, please welcome one of our presenters, Craig Bryson.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. And I see our second speaker just walked in. Hi, Jim. I am Craig Bryson. I'm the Senior Communications Manager at the Road Commission for Oakland County. It's great to see all of you here. It's also good to be back in Rochester. Between 35 years ago and 30 years ago, I was the editor of the late, great Rochester Clarion newspaper, so I spent a lot of time in Rochester covering City Hall and government and schools and everything here. So at the time, I was very familiar with Rochester. Haven't lived here in quite a while, but I love the community. It's good to be back here. So I'm going to start out first just talking a little bit about who and what the Road Commission is before we get to Water Commissioner Nash and give you a lot more information about the Water Resources Commission. But I find a lot of people really are not familiar with who and what the Road Commission is. So I always like to start by giving some background on who we are, if I can figure out my technology here. So first of all, we're separate from county general government. We are not a department of county general government. We are an independent entity. We don't report to the county executive or the county board of commissioners. We're not funded by the county. We currently have about 460 employees, which is about the same number we had in the mid-1960s when Oakland County had half the population it has today and literally 1/4 of the traffic that it has today. So we're still managing a road system with the same number of people we had in the 60s. We operate on a $194 million budget. That's our current fiscal year budget, and I'll talk in a minute about where those dollars come from. We maintain the largest county road system in the state. We have about 1,000 miles more roads than either Wayne County or Macomb County. We're second in size only to the Michigan Department of Transportation, the MDOT statewide system. Even in the wealthiest county in the state, we still have 755 miles of unpaved or gravel roads. That's more gravel roads than many northern Michigan road commissions have total roads. We also maintain on behalf of the Michigan Department of Transportation, we maintain all the state highways in Oakland County. And I'll talk in a minute about what those are. That's 1,561 lane miles of roads on top of our 2,700 miles of roads. We maintain 97% of all the traffic signals in Oakland County. That's all the signals that we own, all the signals that MDOT owns, and all the signals that every city and village in the county owns, except for Royal Oak. Royal Oak is the only municipality in the county that still maintains their own signals, and we're going to get them one of these days. We also maintain about 100,000 road signs across the county. Okay, so I talked about a little bit about road jurisdiction, but I'll give you a little bit more background. It's 3 levels of road jurisdiction. The first is MDOT, the state roads. That's all of the I, M, or US roads in Oakland County and in the state. It's I-75, I-696, M50 down southern part of Rochester Hills. Rochester Road is a real interesting one. That's M150 in Rochester Hills. But north of Rochester Hills in Oakland Township, it becomes a county road and it's ours. South of Rochester Hills, it's a city street in Troy. Troy took it over years ago. So it's a weird little thing where there's a 6-mile section of Rochester Road that's a state highway. M24 Lapeer Road going north to Lake Orion and Oxford is a state highway, and a number of other ones. All the IM and US roads. Woodward Avenue, which is M1, Telegraph Road, which is US 24, all state roads that we maintain under contract with MDOT. We are a contractor to MDOT. So you'll see our trucks plowing the snow, salting, patching potholes, doing routine maintenance on those roads. Then again, there are the 2,700 miles of county roads. And in Michigan, townships by law cannot have jurisdiction over roads. So we own all the roads in Oakland Township except the state highways. I don't know if there's any state highways in Oakland Township now that I think about it. But so we own all the subdivision streets, the main roads, all the roads in the townships. In the cities and villages own the local roads, the subdivision streets, the neighborhood streets, and we split the main roads depending on when they were incorporated and what negotiations occurred when the communities were incorporated. For example, when Rochester Hills was incorporated from Avon Township in, I think, 1980, they negotiated with us over which roads they would take and which roads we would take. So there's 2,700 miles of roads that cities and villages have for a total of 5,600 miles of public roads in Oakland County. Okay, question we always get. Why are our roads in such bad shape? And I keep forgetting to talk into the microphone. And I don't want to say it all comes down to money, but it all comes down to money. And here's a prime example of that. This chart shows you Michigan's rank in the nation compared to all the other states in per capita state and local spending on health, education, welfare, and roads. And state and local spending is the majority of our funding at the road commissions, why we look at that. So as you can see, in health, education, and welfare, Michigan has done relatively well, at least in the years past compared to other states, and is still in the middle of the nation in those areas today. Roads, however, we have been among the bottom 9 states in the nation for at least 60 years. And that makes a big difference over time. We simply have not invested in our roads like most other states have. That means you and I, the residents of Michigan, have paid less to maintain our roads than the residents of almost every other state. And I'll show you why in just a second, one of the reasons. So where do we get our funding? Where does road funding come from? Well, first of all, we don't get any of your property taxes. You will not see the road commission on your property tax bills if you own property. We get our money primarily from the gas tax, the vehicle registration fee or your license plate fees, the diesel tax, a little bit from the income tax, and a few miscellaneous taxes mostly related to trucking. But the gas tax and the vehicle registration fees are our 2 largest sources of funding. So how do we compare with the rest of the nation? Well, we raised our gas tax in 2015. Today, we're still in the bottom half in the nation in gas tax rates. And the states in yellow here are our neighboring Great Lakes states. And as you can see, all of them have higher gas tax rates than Michigan, and many of them have additional fees that Michigan does not have to also fund their roads. Ohio is a great example. Ohio's gas tax is 10 cents a gallon more than ours. Ohio has a roughly equivalent road system to Michigan. And since at least 1995, they've been investing more than $1 billion more in their road system every single year. That's more than, 20-some billion dollars in that time that they've invested in their roads that Michigan has not. And that is one of the reasons why our roads are in worse shape than the Ohio roads. We also receive federal funding that's generated by the 18.4 cents of federal gas tax you pay when you put gas in your car as well. We receive about $20 to $27 million worth of federal funding every year. That's specifically tied to specific projects. We have to apply for it on a project-by-project basis. We can't use it to plow the snow or patch potholes. It's only for major road projects, traffic signal upgrades, that type of thing. And the amount fluctuates from year to year because we're applying for those dollars and competing for those dollars. You may recall in 2015, the state legislature, and at the time, Governor Snyder, raised road funding in Michigan. We had been begging them to do that for years. They finally did it in 2015. They signed a new law that was phased in over 6 years. It generated an additional $1.2 billion in road funding statewide. We're now benefiting from that. It was phased in, but it didn't start till January 1st, 2017, and it started by raising the gas tax from 19 cents a gallon to 26.3 cents a gallon. It also raised the diesel tax to the same rate, so now they're the same, they didn't used to be, and it tied those 2 rates to the rate of inflation, which is why our gas tax is now 28.6 cents, because it's jumped with inflation each year. It also raised vehicle registration fees by 20%, and it created a new surcharge for electric vehicles. However, electric vehicles are a huge problem, and I'll talk to you more about that in a few minutes. Those sources generate half of that $1.2 billion in new funds. The state legislature also dedicated $600 million from the state general fund, which is money generated by our income tax. So those two sources made up that $1.2 billion in new funding. We committed, if we got that new funding, to improve the paved surface conditions on our roads, because people were complaining about the potholes constantly. Our roads were terrible. We committed, if you give us new money, we'll fix the paved roads. And that's what we've done. Since 2017, we've put a new surface on more than 600 miles of paved roads across the county. We've also bought some new equipment. We were at a point in 2016, before that new money started, where we were having problems getting enough snowplows out in the winter to plow the roads. We were having 10, 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50% of our fleet broken down at all times during a storm because they were so old and we couldn't maintain them. So we've been buying some new trucks. We dropped significantly in employee levels during the Great Recession. We went from 556 employees in 2007 to where we are today at 460. And actually, we dropped down to about 350, and we've gradually come back up. So we've been gradually adding some employees. We've learned to be more efficient with our people. We'll never get back to that 2007 level, but we are adding people where we can and where they're really needed. So here's another look at where we've come since 2016. In 2016, 65% of our paved roads were in poor conditions. It was deplorable. The roads everybody knows, the roads are bad, potholes everywhere. Today, or at least in 2022, we're up to 75% roughly in either good or fair position. And in 2023, that's actually come up more, probably closer to 80% in good or fair condition today, and only 26% in poor. So we've come a long way in a short period of time. We're not where we should be. We're not happy with where we are, but we're pleased that we've improved greatly since 2016. But there's a reality check. When the state legislature raised that funding in 2015, everybody, there were a variety of objective studies, they all said, you really need, Michigan, $3 billion a year in new funding if you want to get your roads back into good shape and keep them there. The state legislature finally acknowledged that. The governor acknowledged that, but they said politically the most we can get is $1.2 billion a year. And so they settled for what they could politically get. And that new money is helping. But that new money is also getting quickly eaten up by inflation. And our computer models are telling us that by 2025, we'll get up to about 50% of our roads in good shape. And then, because of inflation, they're going to start deteriorating again unless we get more money. 50% is not where we want to be, but it's the best we're going to get with the funding that's available by 2025. So we're still begging the legislature to address that situation. Interesting to note, there was a lot of COVID relief dollars. Everybody heard about all these COVID relief dollars flowing in. None of it came to the Road Commission. A lot of it went to the state, a lot of it went to the county. We asked both of them to please share with us. They did not, so we didn't get a penny of COVID relief money. Talked a little bit about EVs. Here's the problem with EVs. They don't use gas, right? So they're not paying gas tax. Already, between 2019 and 2021, the state of Michigan lost $50 million in gas tax revenue because of EVs, even with an increased vehicle registration fees for EVs. And between 21 and where we are today, 23, it's been more than 50 million because there are now more EVs on the road. That situation is going to continue to get worse and worse and worse as more EVs come on the road. Road funding is going to further decline. This doesn't just affect us. It affects all the road agencies in the state, but it also affects municipalities, counties, and school districts, because Michigan is one of the few states in the nation that charges a sales tax on gas. That sales tax goes down when there's less gas sold too. So the city of Rochester Hills, the city of Rochester, Oakland Township, Oakland County, the state of Michigan will all see reduced revenue as increased EVs come onto the road unless the state addresses that somehow. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely, that's a great point. They're far heavier than traditional gas-powered vehicles, so they do more wear and tear on the roads as well, while paying less to maintain the roads. Another concern. And we wildly support the environmental value of EVs, but we're very concerned, as the agency that maintains the county roads, we're very concerned about the impact on funding. Yes, sir. Great question. So there's a study there's been a number of studies nationwide, and Michigan is finally beginning to study. There's something called MBUF. What does that stand for? It's a user fee. Well, I can't remember what the M and the B stand for, but it's a user fee where a mileage-based user fee, where you pay a set fee for how many miles you drive rather than paying a gas tax at the gas pump. You would pay either one time a year, or maybe there's a digital odometer on your car. When you pull into a charging station, it reads the odometer and charges you for how many miles you've driven, or maybe you pay a one-time fee every year. That is what's Oregon is testing that. I think the state of Washington is testing that. Generally, that seems to be the direction most states are looking. It would be the easiest way to do it. The technology exists today. There are a number of concerns about privacy. People are concerned. We don't want to track you. We don't want to know where you go, but we just like to get revenue for the amount of miles you've driven. That's probably where we go, but we're probably a ways away from any state enacting that as a wholesale solution to the problem. Good question. Just wanted to talk briefly about winter. We're on the cusp of winter here, and you'll see our big orange trucks out. Just give you a little bit of background on how we do what we do in the wintertime. We have what we call salt routes, 109 salt routes. That's the route that every truck driver is assigned to drive their big orange snowplow salt truck on when we have a snowstorm or a snow event. They average about 35 miles. They take 2 to 2.5 hours to complete each route. Then they'll go back to the garage, refill with salt, and go back out again. So sometimes we get snow that's falling at a rate of an inch an hour or more. So if we have snow falling at an inch an hour, you got a truck that's running a route that takes 2 hours or 2.5 hours. The road is going to cover up before they get back and start that route again from the beginning, right? So we sometimes have people say, it's a snowstorm, the roads are covered, why aren't you out? When in fact we're out, it's just that it takes us that long to get around the routes. So that's a salt route. We've got about 175 maintenance department employees in our road maintenance department, including we hire temporary drivers in the winter to augment our drivers. We have about 140 salt trucks, but no more than 109 will be out at any given time. The rest are backups when trucks break down. We also have contractors on call that we have a contract with each year that help us out on the gravel roads in the countryside, or the subdivision streets, help us get into them faster when we have more than 6 inches of snow. We have 18 heavy-duty pickup trucks that we use for rapid response when we have isolated icing conditions that occur in the middle of the night. We'll have supervision that takes those trucks home. They can jump in their truck, run out, and hit an icing spot when that occurs. They also help us do the turnarounds on the boulevards faster, help us get into subdivisions faster. And we also have 19 road graders, which are the big pieces of equipment that grade the gravel roads in the summer. They can push snow when we need them to, and there's a lot of snow in the wintertime. And in some conditions, we pre-treat the roads with liquid brine. Liquid brine is naturally occurring salt water. We have 3 wells around the county where we basically suck this stuff up out of the ground. There's a huge layer of salt water under Michigan. We bring it up, put it in tanker trucks, spray it on the road before the snow starts, and that delays the formation of ice. We can only do that when we know for certain there's snow coming, and when it's going to be a fairly dry snow. If it's a wet rain mixed with snow, it'll just wash the brine off the road, so we don't do that. But that's a good way to get us, buy us a little time, if you will, when we know it's going to be a dry storm and a big storm. Winter road prioritization. People sometimes ask us, you're out on the main roads, why aren't you clearing my subdivision street? And the reason is safety dictates that we first address the roads with the most traffic moving at the highest speeds. That means we hit the critical routes first. Those are roads with 10,000 vehicles per day per lane, or at least 40,000 vehicles in 4 lanes of traffic or more. That's all the freeways. That's Rochester Road, that's Big Beaver Road, Southfield Road, Orchard Lake Road, some of the bigger mile roads. We hit those first. Then the next priority is 2,500 to 10,000 vehicles per day per lane, and then we work down. And unfortunately, at the bottom of that list is subdivision streets with the lowest traffic volumes moving at the slowest speeds. And we know that's frustrating because sometimes it's a storm and it's a couple of days before we can get in. But if we don't have the main roads clear, you're not going to go anywhere once you get out of your house anyhow. So that's the rationale behind our prioritization system. Just again, wanted to talk quickly about roundabouts. People see a lot of these. We just built our 41st one on Orion Road, up the road a bit here. We like them because they offer improved safety, capacity, and aesthetics. The aesthetics part is a little bit subjective, but a lot of people think they look nicer than a signalized intersection. We have the highest concentration of roundabouts anywhere in the state of Michigan. We built the first roundabout anywhere in the state, right here on the Rochester Hills border at Tinkin, Runyon, and Washington. We opened that one in 1999, first roundabout in the state. Here's why we like these so much. The Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. This is the lobbying group for large insurance companies in Washington, D.C. Their clients pay when there are crashes, so they don't like crashes. So they like to study things and find what can be done to reduce crashes. They did studies, and they found that when intersections are switched from traffic signals to roundabouts, we see a 40% reduction in crashes, an 80% reduction in injury crashes, and a 90% reduction in fatalities or incapacitating injuries. Federal Highway Administration did a very similar study and found the same thing, a 76% reduction in injury crashes and a 90% reduction in fatalities. There is virtually nothing else we can do as a road commission that will reduce fatalities by 90% on our roads. That's huge. In the traffic safety world, that's huge. In our case, we've had 0 fatalities on our 41 roundabouts since we opened the first one in '99, and only a few serious injury crashes. So they've proven themselves. So how do they do that? How do they prevent injuries and crashes? Because we rely a lot on data. We study traffic data constantly. We study crash data to see where the crashes occur and what causes them and if they're related to the roads and what we can do about them. What we found that we know where people die at intersections. There's 2 kinds of crashes where people die at intersections. Those are head-on collisions, makes sense, right? And broadside collisions or T-bone collisions where you're turning left and somebody runs into you as you're turning left. That's where people die at intersections. If you think about a roundabout, they essentially eliminate the physical possibility of either of those types of crashes unless somebody comes across the center island, which is hard to do. And we have had a few people cross the center island. Fortunately, they haven't been in crashes, but they have come flying through and going over curbs and into the center. But it's very rare, and again, we haven't had a single fatality in our roundabouts, so that's why we like them. They also improve congestion or reduce congestion. There's a continuous flow of traffic at a roundabout. You come up to the roundabout from any direction, you yield to the traffic in the roundabout, and then you continue. So you have continuous flow in all directions at all times, which gets you there a lot quicker than the stop and go of a signalized intersection. If you think about a signalized intersection, at any time, 50% of the traffic is at a dead stop for at least half a minute, right? Sometimes a minute or longer at an intersection, and sometimes a couple minutes if you have to wait a couple cycles. This gets people moving constantly, and what we've actually found is in the old days, the only way we could address congestion, and Oakland County's got no shortage of congestion, right? The only way we could address it was by widening roads. We had to widen, that's why there's a lot of 5-lane roads in Oakland County, right? We found in recent years that we can take a 2-lane road, put a roundabout at either end, and we can increase the capacity of that road almost as much as we would by making it a 5-lane road in the past. Not only is it safer, it handles more traffic, and it costs a lot less than building a 5-lane road, and it's a lot less intrusive on the community. So we love roundabouts. The engineering estimate is that it increases road capacity by 30 to 50%. Okay, water, the main topic we can get here. Yes, ma'am. That's a great question. She asked, if you didn't hear, she asked, how are we educating the public about roundabouts? And that has been a constant challenge since day one, since the first one out here in '99. We have done a lot of things. We're continuing doing. We've created videos, brochures, public service announcements. We've sent information flyers and information to every driver's training school in the county. We've done I've talked at senior centers, at community meetings, anywhere they'll have us to talk about how to drive roundabouts. And that's a great question, because the one problem that we do have, as you alluded to, is on multi-lane roundabouts where there's 2 or more lanes in the roundabout. The problem we have is what we call it's weaving from lane to lane. We want people to stay in, pick your lane before you go in. The signs tell you which lane goes right, which lane goes straight, which lane goes left. Pick your lane and stay in it. The problem we see is when people get in and don't look behind them or don't look to the right or left and switch lanes and have a sideswipe crash. Now the good news is those are generally fender bender crashes. You're going pretty slow. We designed those so that you're going 15 to 25 miles an hour in the roundabout. So when you hit another car, it's typically not a serious injury and certainly not a fatality. It's a fender bender. We don't like fender benders, but we'll take a fender bender over a fatality any day of the week. But that is where we're seeing those fender benders. That and rear end collisions where somebody's going too fast in the roundabout, they come up and they hit the car ahead of them. So that is the one thing, and we try to educate people. And one of the big messages is pick your lane before you enter the roundabout and stay in your lane. If it's the wrong lane, go around again and then go out the right way next time around. Great question. Okay, so water and Water Resources Commissioner Nash will talk a lot more about water. I just wanted to give you a little introduction to our involvement in water. We don't have nearly as much as the Water Resources Commission does. Our involvement with water occurs when the water intersects the road or is in our road right-of-way. Typically, that's rivers, ditches, streams, wetlands, that type of thing. We don't control water flow. We don't control the quantity of water, the depth of water, anything like that along our roads, except for the extent that we try to cause the roads to drain properly. We do ditches along the roads. In more urbanized areas, storm sewers along the roads, and the purposes of those utilities is to move the water off the roads to make sure the roads are safe and to preserve the integrity of the structure of the road itself. Unfortunately, and to the chagrin of some residents who live in low areas where there's water, we do not remove water from people's private property. Our ditches are designed to move water off the road and away from the road and to the nearest area where it can drain into a river, lake, or natural area, wetlands. We often hear from people who live at a low spot and water drains downhill, and they say, well, the water runs off your road and it runs down my driveway. We say, yes, it does. Water runs downhill, and as much of our engineers have tried, we have not found a way to make water run uphill yet. If we can address those through our ditches, we will do what we can. If there's a culvert that's blocked, we will do everything we can to clear the culvert. We'll redig the ditches if they've gotten filled in over the time. But there's only so much we can do to keep water from running onto private property. And we do not have jurisdiction to go on to step a foot on anybody's private property and address drainage on private property. Sometimes people in the lakes communities ask us to put a drain from the road down to a lake between some houses so that the road drains better. We cannot do that unless we have a right-of-way. If somebody gives us the property, we can put a drain in. But if it's private property, we cannot do that. So, bridges are our biggest involvement with water. We work closely with the Water Resources Commissioner and his department on the county drains, rivers, streams, that type of thing. We try to preserve the environment, try to maintain and restore environment where possible. We work with the state environment department to help do that. We need permits from them to do anything that involves the water. Just wanted to briefly talk about future projects that we're going to be doing here in the Rochester area. You're probably aware, if you live in the southern part of Rochester Hills, that the Water Resources Commission, the Great Lakes Water Authority, the Regional Water Authority, is now working on DeQuinder Road between Avon and Hamlin. They're putting in a new 96-inch water main down there. That's our road, but they want to put the water main under the road. So the good news is we get that road rebuilt at no cost to the Road Commission. The Great Lakes Water Authority is paying for that. But the road is closed now through the end of next year. Next year, we're going to do a major resurfacing job on Walton Boulevard between Adams and Livernois. We're going to do preventative maintenance on these three bridges: the Avon Bridge over the Clinton River, the Livernois Bridge over the Clinton River, the Parkdale Bridge over the Stony Creek. And then in either 24 or 25, we're going to do a simple resurfacing job on Adams Road between Orion and Stony Creek Roads in Oakland Township, replace a culvert on Tamarack in Oakland Township, and another culvert on Orion Road in Oakland Township. And that is about it for me. Jim, would you like to go now? We can do questions at the end. Okay, sounds good. Anybody has any questions for the roads? Yes, sir. That's correct. We do not own that. That is, it is very confusing. That's the one I mentioned. That's M150, which is, as I mentioned, only in Rochester and Rochester Hills is that a state road. North of Rochester Hills, north of Tinkin Road, it becomes a county road. And south of, South Boulevard, it becomes a city street in the city of Troy. But in Rochester and Rochester Hills, Rochester Road is M150 and it's under their jurisdiction. Yeah, just to be super confusing. Yes, ma'am. Well, we built those bridges new, maybe 10, 12 years ago. So this is preventative maintenance that ensures that their life cycle reaches the full extent. It's resealing the top of the bridge so water doesn't get into the structure. The bridges will not be closed during that work. There'll be one lane closed at a time, but it's like your house. You have to do preventative maintenance from time to time to keep things from deteriorating. So that's what that is. It's a relative, in our world, it's relatively simple work. It's nothing like reconstructing the bridges. That won't take very long. It may be 3 to 4 weeks per bridge, I believe. And unfortunately, that is one of the downsides of road construction, is you cannot do road construction without at least closing a lane, sometimes a full road. Great question. Yes, ma'am. Let's see. That's kind of a loaded question. Let me explain why. You might hear there's a law firm called Auto Law that every year lists the highest crash intersections in Southeast Michigan. We disagree strongly with their listing. What they do is just list intersections and road segments by the number of crashes that occur. That means the busiest roads every time are going to be at the top of that list. So they always cite Telegraph and 12 Mile, I think, is one of the busiest ones. But that is also one of the busiest non-freeway intersections in the entire county. That carries probably about 100,000 vehicles a day. So our question is that really dangerous, or do you have a percentage of crashes that is lower than most other intersections, but it's higher because the traffic volume is high? And if you look at the data, it's the latter. There are more crashes, but there are fewer. We could have an intersection that has 100 cars a day and has 10 crashes a year. As a percentage of the traffic volume, it would be a far more dangerous intersection. So we look at crash rates, which is different than raw crash data. Crash rates looks at the number of crashes compared to the traffic volume, and then we also factor in severity of the crashes. We want to know, is it a fender bender or is somebody getting injured? Not that either one is good, but we're much more concerned. If people are dying and getting injured, we want to know, is there something we can do? We study all of our roads every year. We get all the police reports from every police agency in the county, and we study all the traffic crashes on the roads and determine what's the highest crash rate intersection. And now some of those are still the same ones that are high volume. 12 Mile and Southfield is always a big one because there's a lot of traffic moving in all directions there. Other sections of 12 Mile out in Farmington Hills and Novi, sections of Novi Road. Let me think. Orchard Lake Road, believe it or not, we just finished a project. If you're familiar with Kego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, West Bloomfield, we just finished a project where we not only resurfaced Orchard Lake Road between Commerce Road and Middle Belt Road, but we changed the configuration. It was a 4-lane road, 2 lanes in either direction. We hate that design. It had been that way forever, but there's no center left turn lane. So we saw a huge history of rear end collisions. People would try to turn left from a through lane, right? Because there's no center left turn lane. And they would get hit and constantly. And we've been wanting to do something about that for years. But the road's also got businesses right up close to on either side, so we can't widen the road. So we reconfigured it so there are 2 lanes going, north and east, and 1 going west and south. So it's an offset now with a center left turn lane throughout. So that was one of the biggest problems we had. And it's often roads like that. We reconstructed Lasser Road between 11 and 12 Mile roads a couple years ago. Same thing. It was a 4-lane road with no center left turn lane. Again, not a road that carries a huge amount of traffic, but the crash rate was relatively high. So we added a center left turn lane, and that helped a lot there. Great question. Yes, ma'am. Great question. Crash data is one of the biggest factors. As I said, we study crash data every year, and we rank our intersections based on crash rates. Again, not the total crash volume, but the number of serious injury crashes compared to the traffic volume. And we rank them every year. And then we look at the ones that come out at the top of that list and say, okay, is there something we can do? Would reconstructing that intersection help? Would adding turn lanes and left turn lanes, right turn lanes, would making it a roundabout help? And every year we evaluate the top 10 or so on that list. And if a roundabout would make a difference, and it often does, we will go after funding immediately for them. We have to typically get federal or at least state level funding to do a roundabout because they're not inexpensive. They're less expensive than widening a road, but they're not inexpensive. And that's how we generally choose those. Sometimes there are intersections that are just very congested too, where a roundabout would help. But those are the two, congestion and crash history. Great question. Okay, I think I want to save some time for the Water Resources Commissioner, who has tons of great information for you as well. So.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Oh, thank you. I'm going to wind up my little thing here. Should be ready in just a... My name's Jim Nash. I'm the Oakland County Water Resources Commissioner. I've been in this office almost 11 years now. Before that, I was a county commissioner from Farmington Hills. Used to work with the Road Commission in my old job, and I do it again now in my new job. And pardon me. So the Commission does, we interact with the Road Commission in a bunch of different ways. Bridges, we have drains that are, most of our drains are Chapter 20 drains. That means it's run by the cities. You guys, Rochester and Rochester Hills has a bunch of our drains in them. A lot of our drains will include areas that include roads. So they pay a share, whatever their share is of that drainage area that is their road. So does the DOT. So whatever roads that are in our drainage district, whatever surfaces they have, they pay for that share of the water that goes into those drains. While we're waiting here, a few things. My office, when I came into office, we had about 250 employees. Now we have almost 400 employees. We've expanded our water area. We took over the water and sewer systems in Pontiac. That added about 100 people to my office. We operate and maintain for 22 communities around Oakland County. Instead of their DPW doing water and sewer services and billing, we do it for them under contract. In Pontiac, we do it, so we operate and maintain for 22 communities. Farmington Hills, where I live, is one we've operated them for almost 55 years now. And we operate and maintain a bunch of other communities around the county, from real large ones to small ones. My office does work on sewer interceptors that serve millions of people in Oakland and Macomb counties. We serve about 800,000 in the Clinton River system. That includes parts of Rochester, Rochester Hills. It goes all the way over to Oakland Township and Pontiac. All those flow down into the Clinton River. So we do a lot of work on those systems. We operate and maintain sewer interceptors for the Evergreen Farmington system, 13 communities. That is basically the Rouge River watershed that belongs to them. Most of you belong to the Clinton River watershed. Part of that is the George W. Kuhn Treatment Retention Basin, which is south of you guys, bottom part of Troy, and then it goes all the way down to the bottom of the county. That's a combined sewer system. You guys are on separated sewer systems. Each have their own issues, each have their own problems, and each have their own solutions. Most of the ones that the Road Commission contribute to are separated stormwater systems. One of the problems with separated stormwater systems is whatever's on those streets, on those roads, parking lots, the rain breaks it right into the nearest drain, and it goes, as Craig said, to the nearest lake, river, or stream, and it can carry oil, gas, brake dust, just all kinds of stuff off the pavement. So that has an impact on the environment, and again, most people don't realize that. Even a simple thing like brake dust can, in the environment, it can change insects to be more female and less male, and then that has an issue into reproduction. So that has an impact in the long run. If anybody has a question, please go to my website. It's oakgov.com/water. Real simple. We've got so much information. So, like I said, I have almost 400 employees. We operate and maintain for a whole bunch of communities. We do drains all over the county. Every community has something that we do. Lake levels. So there's 54 circuit court organized lake levels that we have on these lake levels. We have level controls. So we have it's either a dam or a pump or something that can make sure that it doesn't get above a certain level. That's in the summer. It's often, we worry about not having enough water, so we can have, many of them have augmentation wells. So if it's a drought and it's getting too low, we can bring water from the ground and then make it higher to the point where it's supposed to be. We can do about a half an inch, inches above or below the court set level for the lakes. There's a little wiggle room, but we try not to do too much of that. We try to keep it right at that level. In the winter, we take it down 3 or 4 or 5 inches because it's not being used by recreation. And in the spring, when we have all the rains, we don't want it to get too high because it can cause flooding. So that's what we do with that. We operate and maintain those communities. So we're always on those streets. You'll see my trucks the place. We clean sewer systems. We have Vector trucks, these giant trucks that spray down and vacuum up anything that is clogging the lines or anything like that. So we do all that all over the county. The biggest issues we're facing right now, there's several that are really, most people are aware of: aging infrastructure. Now, aging infrastructure, we have a asset management program. When I first came into office about 11 years ago, we had 2 trucks that did closed-circuit TV inspections of underground pipes. Now we have 9 of them, and we're doing it much more thoroughly in a lot of communities. We got a bunch of grants about 8 years ago from the state that allowed us to do a bunch of televising of underground infrastructure. What this does is allows us to really understand what the condition of that infrastructure was. Many years ago, we used to, it used to be we'd put them in the ground. This is supposed to last 50 years. We'll come back in 50 years and see if it's still working. In the meantime, we'll fix it if it breaks. Well, we recognize that we have to do much more thorough asset management. We have to really understand what the conditions are in our underground infrastructure. And we've been doing that for years now. And we work a lot with our contractors, as one of our best contractors in the back of the room. We do this work to make sure that we're going to have the least amount of problems in the long term. We have to maintain this. We have to recognize that this is a full scale of what we're building, from building it, maintaining it, operating it, to eventually replacing it. So all these things are expensive. These are the gray infrastructure issues that we have. And the other part of this that most people don't recognize is just the conditions of those old infrastructure is important, but also the way it was designed. When we designed this earlier infrastructure, we had different conditions than we have now. The amount of rainfall has dramatically increased in the past 20 or 30 years. It's just can't be denied. The data is incontrovertible. We've seen about a 35 to 40% increase in dramatic extreme weather storms than we had just 30 years ago. And we saw this storm. It hit the George W. Kuhn area in 2014. 18,000 homes saw flooding. That was a combined system. So some of that was coming into their homes was contained sewage. Very little compared to the amount of volume, because again, that storm took 2 billion gallons of water, stormwater, through that system in 2 days. 2 billion gallons, just a staggering amount of water. And that 2 billion gallons, we test all through that, the whole thing, we have to test the quality of the water was within our permit level. So even if that massive amount of water through that, we had enough chlorine in that system to treat it. That's one of the benefits of having a combined system is it's actually treated. That system has the largest screening room in the country. When it was built, it was in the world, and it still might be in the world. It's basically 2/3 of a football field long, bar screens that are about a half an inch apart, that anything bigger than that gets caught up in that, and it's raked off that and then sent to Detroit for cleaning at their wastewater treatment plant. Ooh, we might have a chance here. That amount of waste that goes through there, normal days without rain, it goes directly to the Great Lakes Water Authority wastewater treatment plant in Detroit for cleaning. So none of it comes into any of our systems unless there's a major, oh, look at that, unless there's a major rainstorm. So let me catch up here. Okay. Oh, here we go. I have this right here. Uh-oh. Oh. So anyway, so once the water gets past those initial screens, it goes into these giant, basically pools that have weirs, which is like a dam on each end. So what it does is when it fills that system, it rises up, and there's baffles from the ceiling. So when it rises up, it catches anything that's floating. And then anything that's in those big areas, when the water stops moving so fast, it drops to the bottom. So almost everything that's already in there will be either skimmed or collected at the bottom after the storm. And it goes into 3 major storm collection areas. Altogether, we can hold 125 million gallons of stormwater in that system before it's released into the Red Run drain, treated, skimmed, and settled. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to start here. 1896 was the first Oakland County Drain Commissioner. That's when they first started off. The Drain Code was established in '56, the year I was born. Been around a while. 2009, the county changed to be Water Resource Commissioner's Office because we do way more than drains. Most offices do drains and nothing else. I think I'm the only one in the state that operates and maintains water and sewer systems for communities. And so this has almost as many employees as all the other ones in the state combined. So we do a ton of work. We operate and maintain 16 water systems. We either do water or sewer on a bunch. Responsible for 1,300 miles of water main and 7 water treatment plants. We have 450 separate stormwater systems. That's those drains I was talking about earlier. Includes more than 70 miles of storm drains and 36 control structures. And we operate 63, I'm sorry, we've gained some recently, 63 lakes. Jurisdiction over 5 regional sewer systems, that's what I was talking about. 1.5 million people, includes 4 retention treatment facilities and 18 pump stations and more than 450 miles of sewers. We operate and maintain 23 local sewer systems, responsible for approximately 1,160 miles of sewer, 175 pump stations, and 3 water resource recovery facilities, used to be called sewer plants. I'll talk about that in a second. So again, the biggest thing we've talked about for water quality, in especially older communities with older homes, lead and copper rule. Now, we saw some issues in Flint that were caused mostly by getting off the water we have. We have water that's got corrosion control in it, so it lines the insides of pipes with a chemical that makes it much harder for the molecules of lead to pass through into the water. So we do lead service line replacements. The estimated $2.5 billion for 500,000 homes to implement this rule. Some communities have many, some have none. Farmington Hills I live in, we don't have any that are known to exist in Farmington Hills. But cities like Pontiac have about 20% of all the homes or businesses have some kind of lead service line. So that, again, it's going to cost a lot of money for some. The way the law was set up, this was going to happen. All have to be paid for by the ratepayers because every system is an enterprise and there's no profit to it. But everything has to be paid for by the ratepayers. So we were concerned. A lot of communities have already have a significant amount of affordability problems, like Pontiac, Royal Oak Township. And if we add all that extra cost their bills, it's going to make more of them unaffordable. So that's a significant issue that we've worried about. We've started those programs, but now we're starting to get grants. And between the infrastructure bill and the initial epidemic, legislation, we've had a significant amount. We've gotten, I think, 7 million or 8 million now for Pontiac to replace in their systems. We've got $1 million in Royal Oak Township, a very, very much smaller community. So those are systems that we're working on, and again, over time, we're going to be making sure that we replace those things. One of those things I want to, if you even suspect that you might have lead lines coming home, your city should have either already contacted you or they'll be contacting you over the next year or so to let you know that you have lead lines that you have to be replaced, or galvanized lines that were inside a lead line. Most people have galvanized, they don't have actual lead. But we replace it all the way up to the home, and we want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's not going to interfere as little as we can, and that we're going to make sure that we do it over the shortest amount of time. But if you're concerned, just first of all, anytime you haven't used the water for a long time, like 8 hours, or if you overnight, or if you've been at work all day, just run the tap for about 30 seconds to a minute to make sure it's getting real cold. If it gets real cold, that means it's coming out of the main instead of out of your lines in your house. And that means that anything that's sat for a long time, even with corrosion control, you could have a little bit of transfer of lead. So if you let that run for a while, you make sure you do that before you use the water if you haven't used it in a while, and you should be fine. The other thing is check your aerators at the bottom of your faucet, where the water comes out. If you open that up and you go home tonight and open that up, you're going to see black. You haven't it open for a while. Part of that could be bacteria. Part of it is just the things inside it are kind of getting old. The rubber in the oh, is it dying?
Yes.
The rubber in the gasket could be just going bad. But I do it every month or two just to make sure, and I clean them out, the ones I use for my bathroom and my kitchen, just to make sure we're not getting anything from that. But other than that, this year we do testing every year. Every community has a water quality report that you get. Either we do it for them, the 22 communities we operate and maintain, or you do it yourselves. The communities do it themselves. It's a report that tells you what the potential for any contaminants in the water is. We have some of the cleanest water in the country from the Great Lakes Water Authority. They're a really good source of water, and we're in good shape that way. What happened in Flint was they got off our water. They took water out of a river that was an industrial river, and it ate away all that corrosion control on the inside of the pipes, and that's why they had that problem they did. They're back on our water again. They're back with matter of fact, their whole city was remove their lead pipes that they knew existed because they got federal dollars to do that. And again, that wasn't hitting their ratepayers. But there's still tremendous distrust in Flint over that water, and I totally understand where it's coming from. We've got to get past that, though. We've got to show that this is good water, and that the system, the way it's operating now, is going to be delivering them quality water. Okay, the forever chemical. We haven't found the forever chemical in any of our systems that we operate and maintain. The Great Lakes Water Authority has been operating since, I think they said 93, they've been testing for PFAS, and they haven't found any. We get our water up in this part of the county from Lake Huron. That water tap is like 3 miles out on the lake, 400 feet of water. They're not getting any PFAS from that water. So they're in really good shape. When they tested all across the county back in 2017 or 18, they found several small, either subdivision or apartment complex water well systems that they found PFAS in. They immediately got off those, or they put on filtering systems. You can filter PFAS out, but it's the one thing you can't PFAS out is nature. And in the western part of the county, on the Lake Huron watershed, all the way from Oakland County down to the river, there's a fish advisory that you shouldn't eat the fish because of PFAS. That was a landfill up north of Kent Lake that has been leaking for generations. The biggest issue for finding PFAS in Oakland County has been old leaking waste landfills. They have been having some issues. We're working with them. We have to get them to our permit qualifications. We've been working them for a couple of years, and we're going to make sure we get it till they've limited that much that's coming out of their landfills. We're lucky. We don't have any big military bases like in Macomb County. Their Air Force base has just a huge problem around it. One of the things Air Force does is constantly train on firefighting, and they use that foam for many, many decades, and it's really bad. But we're not affected by that so far. We've found some places where it's hitting us, but mostly we're watching it to make sure it doesn't approach any wells areas and things like that, so we're making sure people recognize that there's an issue with that. But again, that's not our job so much. It's more Eagle and EPA. The Right to Know Act, again, you can call the health department, EPA, all those things. There's tons of information. Michigan was one of the first states to really start looking at PFAS and really recognizing that it's an issue. And so we've got a head start on a lot of states that haven't even really addressed it yet. So this is how it works. So the water source intake for here, like I said, it's Lake Huron, comes off the lake. There's a treatment, whoopsie daisy. Comes off the lake, there's a treatment plant right on the lake, and it sends all the way here, 60, 70 miles. Imlay City, there's a little break where it comes south to Oakland County or goes west to Flint. So again, that's how it comes. So once it comes to the municipal master meter, is that this? Yeah. It comes in here. Every city has one of these. So this is where it comes off. This is where your community meter is, so it's charged to your community how much water you use, and then it's divided up by the community and sent to in your bill. So please.
So one of the concerns are the cost of it. I'm in Rochester in the summer, so when I heard that the Rochester system is just older and that's part of the reason, and someone else said the Rochester bills are expensive because it stops at different cities and those cities are taking on extra fees. Is there any truth?
So your bill, when the rates are decided every year, first of all, we get what the new rates will be from Great Lakes Water Authority in February or so, and they send them out to all the communities that this is what the charges will be for this year's water. Then the communities take that and they decide how much it's going to cost for the water and for the sewer services, and then whatever projects you're doing in that community. So if you have, like you said, Rochester has a lot of older infrastructure. You guys are probably doing a bunch of work right now on that. So that goes into your rate bills, and often it'll be for a bond to pay for it, and then you pay for it for 20 years. A lot of communities, like in Pontiac, we do that. We do a lot of that with, we do both use bonds sometimes, and we just run it from the rates. So we're collecting enough from the rates that we don't have to borrow. Borrowing costs are just an added expense. Okay, I'm still knocking away at this. Go ahead.
My bill is split between fresh water and sewage because a lot of old Rochester is on its own. We're not getting the city fresh water.
Rochester, the city of Rochester, you get your water through, oh my gosh, what's the community right over the border in Macomb? I'm sorry? Shelby. Yeah, Shelby is the one that you get your water through Shelby. They bought it through, and that was years ago. They're talking about changing that now. Of the city of Rochester, not the hills? Oh, I guess I didn't realize. Yeah, I know that you get a bunch of it from yeah, okay. Okay, so you get your own water. A lot of communities do that kind of thing. Waterford has their own well system, and everybody's on that. So, but they're part of the sewer system for Great Lakes Water Authority, and so are you guys. So I'm assuming that that's how it's kind of split up, but I'm not that familiar with the city itself, so I'm not sure how that's done. But I know that we do a bunch of the work for the city. So you have these pressure reduction valves. Again, that's something that, it's one of those things that uses energy to reduce the the pressure of the water, there's other ways to do it that actually creates energy by doing it instead of using energy. So we're looking at those kind of things, and that's again a long-term process. So it goes down to distribution lanes. It comes out into each, usually right down the water, down the road, or maybe on the side of the road, and then once it hits that the curb stop where the valve, you can shut the water on and off. Once it hits that and it goes to the house, that's all private property and the responsibility of the homeowner, except for the lead and copper rule. That's a separate thing. But other than that, the homeowner is responsible for whatever the service line happens on that. And when it's on the sewer side, all the way to the connection to the sewer main is a responsibility of the homeowner. So that's just how it's done in Michigan. So again, that's generally speaking how the water systems are operated. Invasive species are a significant issue. Asian carp, they're coming hard for the Great Lakes. Feds have been trying to do something about that for years. There's also other animals, the red crayfish. That's an invasive species that's really, it's coming to our area. Algae is another huge issue. One of the big issues with algae is not necessarily invasive, but sewer leaks, failing septics have a huge impact on algae. Even things like if you fertilize your lawn right up to the edge of the water, every time it rains, it's taking fertilizer in there, and that is food for bacteria. So that's one of those things that we talk about a lot. It's called riparian buffers. Riparian means anybody that has land that's attached to water, lake, river, stream, whatever. If it's up against water, that's riparian. And if you put a little patch of native species between the lawn and the water, you're going to catch most of that fertilizers before it reaches your water. The more you do that, the more you're going to protect from algae blooms, and those can be deadly. It'll kill the whole fish population. They're just really impactful economically too. Oakland County really depends on our water. We have more lakes than any other lake in Michigan, any other county in Michigan, and our economy depends on the water that we are responsible for. So algae blooms are a significant issue. Again, our whole purpose is this health and safety of our people and protecting the environment that we all depend on. This over here is the George W. Kuhn. This is that screening operation. As far as you can see, 200 feet of screens. We have to make sure that we're complying with all the regulations. Those have increased over the years, and that's another thing that causes things to go up, is we have to do more work on all this. Address, again, lead service lines, PFAS, local dam safety. You know, we had that big thing in central Michigan, 2021, that all those floodings. We inspected every dam in Oakland County. They have a few that need work, but there's two things we look for: how it's the condition of the dam or whatever it is that's keeping water back, and the impact if it failed. So if it just goes off into a bunch of woods, not much impact, that can take some time to fix. If it goes into a neighborhood, if it goes into a downtown, we want to make sure that that's protected. So that's the ones we have to make sure are the most up to date. The health department does wells. We don't really do wells at all. The health department is pretty limited in what they do with wells. They authorize the opening of a well and the capping of a well, but other than that, it's up to the individual. Whoops, I did that again. Septic systems are failing all over the state. About a quarter of all the septic fields in the state are failing by the Eagles estimate. That's going to be a huge issue. We're doing a project in the north part of the county, northwest part of the county. They have failing septics, that whole area. There's 4 lakes that are significantly impacted by failing septics. We're in the process of building a sewer collection system for that area that will only serve very specific areas. It won't encourage sprawl, but it's going to be able to save a bunch of homes and a bunch of lakes that are in real trouble. And of course, lake beaches. Again, that's one of those things that they oversee, and they make sure that it's no algae and bacteria issues with them. Again, this is the confidence reports I was talking about earlier. That's going to explain to you about all the quality water issues. This is, like I was saying with this is to make sure that your water is safe. Just keep those aerators clean, run the water if you worry at all about having lead pipes. So again, this is my webpage, oakgov.com/water. Really just a ton of information. Again, the aging infrastructure. This picture here is from the Christmas of 2016. In Macomb County, they had a failure on I think it was an 8-foot sewer pipe 100 feet underground. It took down 2 houses, completely collapsed them, and significantly damaged 3 others. Cost about $75 or $80 million to fix. It was about 1.5 miles when the same thing just upstream happened about 2009. The same thing happened, and when they fixed that, they had inspectors go through, and they said, you need to inspect every year. So Macomb County immediately jumped into action and never inspected it again. And when you don't inspect things, they're more likely to collapse. So Macomb County suffered a dramatic collapse. If they had found it and fixed it before it collapsed, it would have cost maybe $5 million. But instead, it cost about $70 million. So the cost of not doing things, of not keeping the stuff up, is going to have a huge impact. Again, aging infrastructure, it's operating for 75 to 100 years, well past their lifetime expected. SEMCOG, the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments, so it's a regional planning agency, best in the state, I got to say, they estimate it's going to cost $2 to $3 billion a year for the next 20 years to bring our water and sewer infrastructure up to where it should be. So we haven't been investing at that rate, and if we tried to put that all in the ratepayers, nobody could afford the water. So we need outside funding. We got it up until about 1980, 60% or 70% of all the water infrastructure funding came from the federal government. After 1980, it slowly started to go away until basically they got rid of the congressional directed spending that they finally brought back. But it got to the point where we got virtually no funding from the federal government, and that's one of the reasons we had so much problems. The federal government. The federal government was massively investing in water, sewer, and stormwater systems up until the early 80s, and then it slowly, they started taking all that funding away. They just quit spending money on it. And they basically left to the states. And Michigan, like with the roads, and we didn't invest that much in Michigan in infrastructure. I'm sorry?
It wasn't legislated to give it back to them?
Right. It was just, they used to be part of spending bills that was well established, but they just quit spending the money. And basically they said that, we'll just send it back to the states. The states are better at this, but the states don't have much money either. So in the long run, we need to make sure our infrastructure is the way it should be. We've gotten new technologies that we can line some of these water and sewer, especially sewer pipes, we can line them to add up to 100 more years of use for some of these very old systems. So we found much more efficient ways of doing this replacement, and we found more dependable materials over the long haul that we are using now. So what used to have a 50-year life expectancy for underground infrastructure, now we're looking at 100 or more years, and we can extend that even farther. So lakes, dams, and moors, again, we do a ton of work on lakes, mostly for lake levels. Quite a few of our lakes are chains of lakes. So we can start at the top with an augmentation well, and it'll help all those lakes down the chain of lakes. So anyway, now we say it says 54 lakes. We got to straighten that out. We operate 36 lake level structures. Like again, a bunch of them are strings of lakes. These are where we have the lakes. You can see the little red dots, and the green ones are the augmentation wells. So we have them all over the county. My little corner of the county, we don't have any lakes. We got little streams, and we don't have any lakes. I missed that, but I come up here a lot. So anyway, this is your watersheds. So you guys are in right up here, right? So you guys are in the Clinton. This is the Rouge River watershed. That's the most densely populated. This is one of the biggest in terms of population, but this is one of the most densely populated. And then you have I'm sorry? The Huron, boy, I'm sorry. Yeah, the Huron. Now we have a little bit of up at the top, we go off the north and the west, but other than that, The most of them are come through our area. Again, we are the source of all these. We're the very top of these watersheds. So everything that we do ends up affecting those watersheds. That's why we're trying to make sure that we protect these, what we're doing. Again, this is climate change is bringing much heavier storms and is expected to get much more significant over time. One of the big things we have to recognize is we can't just keep building bigger concrete infrastructure. We just can't keep doing it. It's so expensive. So we're much more looking at things now, whoops, oh gosh. We're much more looking at things now called green infrastructure. Has anybody ever heard of green stormwater infrastructure? More and more people are hearing about it, and I can tell you, when I started this job, nobody ever heard about it. But it's becoming much more common. We're actually doing a project in the George W. Kuhn area that we're giving rebates up to $2,000 for people to put green infrastructure on their residential properties. That area is about 60% of the land space is residential properties. And so we can have a real chance of making this a significant impact on stormwater discharges. So the more people that can keep their water on their land instead of getting to that nearest storm drain, the less pollution there'll be going downstream. So what we're doing here is we're, like right here, this is a rain garden. This is another look of a rain garden. So the water that comes off the roof of a house up here, behind here, and then flows across the yard will hit here. A yard, like concrete, a rooftop, that's impervious surfaces. Whatever water hits that's going to come right off and go to the nearest place it can go. Once you have grass, a mowed lawn, the roots of a mowed lawn are only about 3 or 4 inches deep. So the water can follow those roots there, but once it's hit that, there's no place else to go. So once that first little bit of rain hits, it stops the water from being absorbed and it runs off the grass just like it was concrete. So if we can then get to this where it's got a more absorbent soil and native plants that have much, much deeper roots. Some of these plants, like these, I think that's a black-eyed Susan, which is one of those cone flowers. Coneflower roots can go 15 feet underground. All that water that hits them can go follow those roots all the way down 15 feet before it starts, backing back up again. So what we want to do is have that first inch of a rainstorm not leave your yard. If the first inch doesn't leave your yard, that's most rainstorms. If a 2-inch rainstorm would then only get a little bit more rain than a 1-inch rainstorm would without green infrastructure. So this is a way of making sure that what we do is going to be as least effective on the storm drains as we can. Plus, you got flowers all year. So as long as in the spring, I have 2 of these on my yard, and I have plants that start right first in the spring, and then all the way through summer and in the fall. And so except for about 3 months of the year, I have flowers in my front yard, and it's beautiful. And it helps the drainage. So that kind of things we need to be recognizing as effective. So, such as, oh, you mean pollen? Yeah. Well, then maybe you should avoid doing that. You have rain barrels, you have pervious pavements that you can use. There's lots of other ways of doing it. For most people, this is a really effective way. We're doing it in schools, in offices, in government buildings, are doing it all around. But that's only a limited amount of area that we can cover. So that's why we're trying to encourage people to do it on their own private property. You can do just what's called a bioswale. That's not necessarily planted with anything, but it can be a bioswale where the water collects. You've seen them in parking lots. You see the little hump, and it's got a curb around it, and it's got grass on it, and a tree that's usually half dead. It's because there's no place for the water to go. If that first little bit of rain makes that water, the roots of the grass impenetrable, then it flows right off onto the parking lot and goes to the nearest storm drain. Instead of having a hump, you have a ditch, and you still have the curb around it so nobody drives into it. But instead of running off that, it absorbs it, and you can have a stormwater drain right in the middle of it, but at the level of the row of the parking lot instead of down there, so it fills up before it goes into there, and then it just absorbs into the ground within 24 hours. There's lots of ways to do it. You really don't have to plant a plant in there. I just like them because I love plants. But again, so without having that, either way, with plants or without, see, this is the drain that it would absorb through into, or you have a drain, what you call a honeycomb top on it, so it can sit there and only gets into it once it's reached the top of that bioswale. So there's lots of ways of planting these, of doing new pavements, of doing, again, there's pervious pavements that are either asphalt or concrete. They're not quite as strong as regular pavement, so most people put them around the edges of the parking lots so it can run off there and then come into that. They put one in Lawrence Technological University over in Southfield. They put one near a storm drain that served a half-acre parking lot. And in a normal rainstorm, it would just be filling that thing, that storm drain, and be just running as fast as it could. So what they do is they put about a 2 foot of pervious pavement around it, and then these new technology, it's a little rod that goes way deep in the ground that can pull a lot more water into the ground. And now you can run a fire hose on that parking lot, and almost none of that water will reach the storm drain. It's that effective. And that's what you do in more densely populated downtowns and things like that. You can put those kind of things into things that you don't even know they're there, but they're really absorbing a lot of water. And again, this is what you see. This was, I'm not sure exactly what this picture from. I think this is from when it hit Houghton, the city of Houghton up in the UP about 5 or 6 years ago. They had an incredible storm, and it wiped out a huge number of roads. And of course, this was 2014 on I-96 and I-75, and that was insane. Actually, my chief deputy got caught in that, and she had to abandon her car and, wade through chest deep water to get out of that. But again, that's the kind of thing. And I'll tell you, there's another thing that the MDOT did along I-75. They're doing that big giant project. They put a 4 mile long, 14-foot storage tunnel underneath I-75. So that can hold up to 25 million gallons of stormwater that used to go pumped directly into the George W. Kuhn, and that contributed to all that extra outflow. That's a separated stormwater system, part of that stormwater system, so we can send that into a drain that goes to the Red Run and ends up in Lake St. Clair. But at the same time, the first flush of that stormwater will be sent to the George W. Kuhn because that's going to have any pollutants in it, and that's what cleans out those pollutants. So that's what we're doing. Again, that's going to add about 25 million gallons of storage effectively to our George W. Kuhn system, so it takes it up to 150 million gallons of storage instead of 125 before it's actually released. So those are the kind of things. And I'll tell you, the zoo, the Detroit Zoo, is really looking to do a wonderful project. They have I think it's a 118-acre facility there, and they're gonna take all that stormwater and keep it on that campus. They have a lake at the back of the zoo that they're gonna send that water to, and it's gonna be able to be absorbed by the earth, and then some of it will go downstream. So that's gonna allow another whole section of that George W. Kuhn area to not contribute flow in storms. That's gonna help that significantly in less releases. So our local efforts, we're doing planning with the communities everywhere. Like I talked about, we're doing that green infrastructure grant program. We really think that's going to be an effective program. We've set aside $200,000 over 2 years to do those communities, to rebate folks who are either planting 1 or 2 trees, a couple of rain barrels, or those two and a rain garden. So all those things combined. So trees are very effective. They absorb water. They absorb water through the leaves in a rain. They absorb water out of the ground, and they give you urban cooling areas, which is very effective. Stormwater utilities. We have legislation in Lansing to help create them. We're one of the only states that don't allow them. What a stormwater utility does is it allows the community to set up a system where they collect stormwater fees for the amount of water you actually produce from your property. So they look at the impervious surfaces of that property and calculate how much water comes off them, and they'll charge you for that much of the system's expense. What that allows you to do is put in some of those systems that allow you to retain that water on your property, and then the fee would go down if you kept that first inch on your property and showed that it's effective, which we would verify. then you would eliminate your stormwater fee. So that's the kind of things that we can do. It helps pay that cost that we need to do, and at the same time helps people pay to reduce that need by putting their own green infrastructure on their homes. That's a really effective way, and I think that's something that's going to be able to, once it's passed the legislature, that's something that communities will be able to do. You're already paying for it, but mostly you're paying for it either through your water bill or your property taxes or something else that the city does. And again, that's gotten some cities into trouble with lawsuits, so it's something we're trying to get away from. Education is super important. We do watershed festivals for 4th and 5th graders at Oakland University for Clinton River watershed groups. And for the Rouge River, we do it at the Cranbrook Institute of Science. We do about 3,000 kids a year come to those, and they go to different stations. We have about 40 at each one, and they go to different stations. Most classes go to about 6 or 7, and they learn all kinds of different things about water and the environment, how to protect it, all the things that live in it. It's just a really neat thing, and I can tell you the kids, I've had folks that work for me that remember that they went through that, and they were really impressed by it. So if you catch them when they're young, they're going to get their imaginations, and they're going to be wanting to do this. And I can tell you, I met so many young people from middle school to college, and even young engineers that are just, they get it, and they really want to do good work. And I've met so many just incredibly brilliant young people that just makes me feel like we're gonna make it. We're gonna do good things. Again, the incentives like the rebate program and the new stormwater design standards. We worked with Macomb, Wayne, and Livingston counties to the chagrin of Eagle for a while, but they recognized it was better if we did it as a region and instead of trying to do it just each individual county. So we've really gotten a regional stormwater ordinance that all the communities are looking to adopt. Already a lot of them have, and it's just a way of organizing our stormwater efforts to make them much more efficient and make them recognize the needs of the future and address them. That's already been all settled. That's been done. Yeah, all that engineering has been done, and the standards were put out in 2021. So now most of the communities have already either taken them on their own, which is what most communities do anyway. And what this does is it sets up how we want to make sure that the first inch of rainfall is held on the surface. That is such an important part of what we're doing. And so one of those things, we could build bigger tanks and pumps and pipes underground, but it's so expensive. And the saying is in engineering is there's always a bigger storm. You can have the biggest facility in the world, and eventually you're going to get a storm that'll overwhelm that. So the more we can do it on green infrastructure, keeping that water on the surface like nature had it before we built roads and houses and all the things and parking lots. So that's what we're trying to do, is bring that back so it absorbs rather than just runs off. And that's important. I'm sorry? I'm sure you will. And again, Rochester and Rochester Hills have been doing this kind of thing for a while now, and then that planning effort and getting those things off the ground. So assuming that this program at the George W. Kuhn works, we really want to introduce it on a wider group of communities. And that's something that I think the Board of Commissioners at Oakland County is very interested in. I've been talking to them a while about that. The potential for doing a tripartite program for green infrastructure, it would be really important. And I think that's something we'll be talking about with the communities. So again, this is education, trying to get people to understand the issues. Again, this green infrastructure, that's a bioswale. You see it fills up with rain. I'm on the Oakland County Parks Board. You might have noticed this thing here. And we're doing a ton of green infrastructure projects and just to really familiarize people with it. Again, all this is going to come with educational signs so people understand it. And the rebate program, we're going to give people signs to put in their front yard to show that they're doing this with a little, whatever that call is, the GQ symbol or whatever it is, so they can go and find out more about it. QR, and that's it. But anyway, so it's all about education, showing people how effective this can be. This is permeable pavement. That's a rain barrel. Again, I have a couple of them at my house. This is a combined system. When you see a pipes that big that serves sewers, that means it's a combined system, because a sewer system by itself not a whole ton of water flows through that, but we got to have them big, so when a big storm comes, it doesn't stay on the, it doesn't flood anything, it flows downstream. So these are large infrastructure projects that we have to do. Mostly nowadays, we're doing, replacements and fixing things, but in the long run, the green infrastructure should make it so we don't have to make these much bigger than they were now. That's, again, what we're trying to do. SEMCOG, I worked with their green infrastructure planning, and they're doing a ton of work helping communities address these things. I think it's dramatically important. SEMCOG is a great organization. Again, we work with the Great Lakes Water Authority on all these things. They've been very effective on that too. Again, we're planning engineering reviews, inspections, cross connections. Cross connection is when a sewer connects illegally to a storm drain, so you're getting actual sewage in a storm drain. That's something that we come across from time to time. Industrial pretreatment program, that means every industrial or business that uses water and then sends it to the sewer, we have to make sure that they're not sending in, it's polluting into that sewer. So we have a program that we either make them do whatever needs to be done to stop whatever is getting into the water from them, or we can build something to do it and then charge them for it. Project management, we do soil erosion. The biggest polluter of our lakes, rivers, and streams is erosion. And a big chunk of that is around construction sites. So if you've ever seen those big cloth fences around them, that's a silt fence. So nothing can get off that and get into the storm drain. So whenever there's anything bigger than an acre that's being worked on and it's got open ground, it's got to have by law a soil erosion fence around it. And we enforce that for about 2/3 of the communities, but a bunch of them do it themselves. So it just depends on the community. And Miss Dig, of course, is if you're digging anything in your front yard, you make sure you call Miss Dig. There was a story just a while ago that something like 600,000 people in the Pacific Northwest lost their gas because somebody hit a gas line in their front yard, and you just never know. So you call Miss Dig. It can cause real problems if you dig and you hit something. Sewer infrastructure, maintenance, water system operations, systems control, lake level controls I mentioned, lake improvement boards, we have members on all of them. The county drains, drain permits, self-service, storm drain maps, we have that again. All that on my website, or you can call this number. We're always available. We want to make sure everybody understands these systems. We'll come out to your house and talk to you if you have an issue that you think we need to see. So we're always available. Again, these are the drain maps. We have Chapter 4 drains are something that used to be mostly for farmers, and it's just the people that organize the drain pay for it. The community itself doesn't. But the Chapter 10 drains is when the community itself pays for that. Some of them are special assessment districts, especially if you're building something. That way you're charging the cost to the people that are actually affected by it. This is the George W. Kuhn I was talking about. That big. This is the screening facility, the biggest in the country. This is the wastewater treatment plant. Now it's a water resource recovery facility in Pontiac. We did a project here that made us the most efficient plant in Michigan and one of 4 in the country that can take these solids in the sewage, treat them in something, this called an anaerobic digester, and bring methane out of it. So we did an improvement here that made this methane production about 5 times as efficient as it used to be. So now we're taking the methane that we run off, that we create here, it's a atmospheric cycle methane, and it's airtight, and we send it over to run this whole building here, and basically the giant pressure cookers that we use for that process. So all of that is run from here instead of fossil fuels. And we're looking at a project now, and we're looking for a grant from the Energy Department that would allow us to build a project that would make us the most efficient wastewater treatment plant in the world for converting solids to methane. What we would do with that then, we would build right about here, we would build a thing that uses the methane here to create energy, and we'd have electric energy. We could run the whole plant off it and actually charge electric cars off it if we have a fleet of electric cars for the county. So there's potential here that we would be the most efficient in the world, and this would be an example for any wastewater treatment plant that has anaerobic digestion as how they can make this a generator of energy rather than a user of energy. That's a very important thing. As we try to get off fossil fuels, my industry can play a significant role in that. Again, this is one of the things we do. We have a training facility, MAP in SCADA. This is a kids calendar contest we do every year. We have about 700 to 1,000 kids that send us pictures, and we do a calendar from them. They have an award ceremony at Cranbrook every year that we give them a little bag of swag, and they get a free membership for Cranbrook for a year. It's really cool. The kids love it. And again, these are some brilliant young people. It's just amazing. This is one of those things. Flushable wipes. It should be a crime to call them flushable wipes. Yeah, they go down your toilet, so they flush. Yeah, they're all gone, right? Except for this is a screening. And this is what happens. This cost about $500,000 to clean up and to fix a couple of the pieces that literally broke because of all those rags that get people flushed down the toilet. Between rags and fats, oil, and grease, that's one of the biggest issues that we have in cleaning pipes. And backups, sewer backups are a major issue, and virtually 95% of the time it's either fats, oil, and grease or some kind of flushable wipe or something somebody flushed down a toilet. And they cause tremendous damage. Just remember, don't flush anything but what comes out of you and toilet paper, and don't ever flush any fats, oil, and grease in your sink, because it will either clog your pipe and flood your own house, or it'll go downstream a ways and flood 20 houses. We had an apartment complex where the entire bottom floor of the apartment complex had sewer in their house because a McDonald's kept throwing fats, oils, and grease, and these pipes aren't that big, so they clog, and it's something that we have to be aware of. And please don't do that. Please don't flush, and please don't put fats, oils, and grease. Again, the SAW grants I was talking about, that's stormwater asset and water, stormwater asset management, water. The grants that Oakland County got more than any other county. We're good at grants, and it allowed us to fix a ton of them. It allows us to rank that infrastructure and do the long-term planning to replace what we need to replace before it breaks. This is the silt fences here, and this is a book all about how to build riparian buffers. It's basically just a rain garden on the shoreline. Really important. You don't have to have it blooming, you don't have to have any of that stuff. You just have to have long roots, and you have to make sure that it pulls out. And I fish a lot around this area, and every year I go out to a lakes, there's a few more that have them on them, and that's great. People are recognizing it's important. Can't tell you how important that is if you want to have a healthy lake. Again, we have partners. We work with Congress. Now that we have the congressionally directed spending again, it's really good. They get some great projects that we've been able to do that we haven't been able to do in the past. You can volunteer. There's a lot of you guys, communities have water advisory councils. You have environmental, whoops, I keep doing that. You have environmental groups, citizen environmental groups. There's a lot of communities that have that. Please join that. We can do so much together. Being, again, a good steward of our environment is going to be so important to us. We can't survive without our water, and it's just vital we do this. Again, this young man made me look like a piker. He's just entering 6th grade, and he gave one of the most amazing speeches I've ever heard, and it was just wonderful. He's going to be somebody one day. J.C. Garrison is the one that organizes all these contests and watershed festivals, and we had a great contest for a storm manhole cover. This was designed by a young lady from Troy Schools, who now is, I think she's at U of M. We gave her a $1,000 scholarship, and we have these scattered around the county on storm drains. You might see them from time to time. I have a talk show that I do on the cable stations. I think you guys actually get that cable station, called Water by the Quarter. We've gotten a whole ton of awards. Just can't tell you how many we've gotten. We're recognized as a leading agency in all these new technologies and all these new ways of looking at things. So I'm real proud of that. We've done a ton of work, and we're really well respected. Eagle comes to us for advice often, and that's just a great sign to me. So I feel good about that. And that's it. Any questions, please?
Yeah, I've been struggling with our stormwater system and our subdivision for 15 years. And I'm a volunteering and paying. We've got all these experts, but I don't see the wisdom of having the stormwater system in your subdivision not administered by some professionals. Can you help me with that? That's the state of Michigan or?
Yeah, it's set up by the state of Michigan when they set up their subdivisions and plots. It's part of what they have to do to qualify for it. Actually, we oversee that for Eagle. We do the permits for that, but it's a state regulations. I'd love to talk to you about that. Let me give you my phone number. If anybody's interested, my cell is the best way to reach me. It's 248-842-6185. Oh, there you go. Oh, way ahead of myself. I did that without even thinking about it. So yeah, give me a call. I'd love to sit and talk to you. We could have some folks, talk to you. One of the things that some subdivisions do their own water, so they'll have a well system and they'll send that out. We've had a bunch of them lately that are trying to get on city waters because the old infrastructure to replace it for a subdivision would be really expensive. So we are working with some to help them organize and take that over. I've never been approached by that for drainage, but I'd be happy to sit down and talk to you and have some of my,
We don't have the ability to raise all that money.
No, I know, that's the big thing.
By our bylaws, we can increase it 5% a year, and then, beyond the that, we have to have, 3/4 of the people vote. 50 out of the 400 homes vote for anything,
Yeah. No, I got you. No, so give me a call, and we'll talk to you and see if we can help in any way. I'm not sure exactly. We can't go on private property, so.
Money we need to set aside, to maintain this system in the future, and we've done a limited amount of camera work.
Yeah, I got you. Well, we'll talk, and I'll see if we can work on something. We're really limited on that, but we can help at least. We send you in the right direction on things.
Can you tell me about comparatively, Great Water Authority versus other water sources around the state?
Well, the Great Lakes Water Authority, about half of their budget is just loan repayment. So they spend a lot on loan repayment, and that's something that affects our bills for sure. And the bulk of your bill that you're going to get in most communities is the services of water and sewer from Great Lakes Water Authority. That's usually about 75 or more %. The rest is what you're doing in your community. So I can't. I'm just not sure what I can say about that.
My impression is that our water rates are extremely high. We are really not the greatest freshwater resource in the world.
No, I get you, and a lot of it is just the old infrastructure is being replaced, and many communities, you're paying bonds to do that, and or you're paying through your rates to do it, but it's one of those reasons. It's very old. This is a very old system. Rochester, you've been on the system for a long time, and I think you had your own before you got on the system, right? But I'm not sure. But yeah, so it depends on where you are and what the projects are in any particular community. Again, part of that is federal regulations that they keep getting more strict, and we have to keep up with that. So part of that is just keeping up with regulations.
Talk more about the legislation that's going on about the billing for water and sewer. They're connected. Is there legislation going on?
Well, there's legislation around stormwater, and there's also affordability legislation that would create an affordability program, pretty much like the gas and electric ones, where you pay a couple of bucks a month, and it's a system so anybody under 200% of poverty can get a subsidy on their bill. What that allows is a lot of communities have 5 or 10% of their communities can't afford the water, so they carry an amount of basically accounts receivable from one year to the next, so they end up having to cut back on projects because they just don't have the money coming in that they normally would. So this allows a lot of communities to do more, but still not have as much of it hit the ratepayers. So that's one thing that's going on. A lot of communities, there's two ways of billing for communities. Most communities in Oakland County, you're paying a set fee every month and a fee for the amount of water you use. So the set fee pays things like the bonds that you're doing, the costs that go on no matter whether you're using water or not. So that's often about half your bill for water and for sewer, and the other half is the commodity bill, how much you actually used in a month. Or there's another way of doing it where if you use no water that month, you still pay an amount, and just a share of your bill every month goes to the things that are fixed costs, and the rest goes to the commodity. But either way, you're paying for the commodity and you're paying for whatever work you're doing in your community.
But I thought you were talking about legislation going on about the billing for your sewer line being connected to how much water you use.
No, what I was talking about earlier, the stormwater utilities, that's for stormwater. That's not for water and sewer. The stormwater is different because it's the only one that's not regulated. Water, drinking water is heavily regulated to make sure it's quality, and sewer is heavily regulated to make sure you're not polluting. But stormwater just is not really regulated at all. It's non-point source pollution, and that's when our biggest issue is stormwater. And again, here, we have to protect the Great Lakes. So anything that's bringing pollutants into the lakes, rivers, and streams is going to end up in the Great Lakes. That's what we're trying to protect. 50 years ago, in the 70s, the Clinton River was basically an open sewer. It was horribly polluted. I mean, there was a famous picture of a Volkswagen Bug sticking up out of the water with a tree growing out of the back window. And I mean, it was bad. And through federal funding and mostly volunteer efforts, the Clinton River is a changed river. It's beautiful now. We're catching fish. That little, submicroscopic, just over microscopic life has come back to that river that was dead for years. Mostly volunteer efforts. The Clinton River Watershed Council has had a huge impact on the Clinton River, massive, and it's something we're almost going to be delisted. We were listed for decades as highly polluted, and eventually we're going to get delisted. We'll get enough pollution out of that water that will be delisted. We're way towards that, and within 5 or 10 years, I think, as long as we keep getting funding and keep doing this mostly volunteer work, we will get there, and I think we'll be in a good place. So we've improved dramatically in the last 50 years, and we're still going at it. So the Clinton River Watershed Council is great. Oh, cool.
They're funding for the stormwater control.
I'm sorry?
What does it do with the
Well, they're looking for some grants, but they're going to do a lot of it themselves. Yeah, from the state. They've applied for a couple of grants, and the state is looking like it might do it, but they're going to put a bunch of their own money in it too. So this is a real commitment by them. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.